Hello everyone, my name is Gabby and welcome to part 3 of my reactions to rereading the Hunger Games books and rewatching the movies in preparation for the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. In this video I'm going to be discussing Mockingjay, the third book in the series. I just want to dive right on into it. So here is your spoiler warning that there will be spoilers for Mockingjay in this video, but without further ado, I just want to dive right on in and get started. You guys know the drill by now. So one of the things that I don't understand is that it seems like there's a lot of people that do not like Mockingjay and do not find it a satisfactory conclusion, which I do not understand personally, because I don't see any other way that this series could have been concluded. I just think Suzanne Collins did such a wonderful job of tying all these threads together in such a beautiful little bow, and everything felt like it concluded so satisfactorily, and that like all of these elements that she introduced were so beautifully explored and wrapped up, and I can't think of a better ending. Like, for someone who did not enjoy Mockingjay, like, I'm genuinely curious to know what you didn't like about it and what you thought could have been changed, what you would have liked to have seen instead, because the general consensus is what I've heard is that people just don't like it, and I don't know why. Like, I want a reason, I want an explanation, because I think it's such a brilliant conclusion. And I remember being in the car on my way home from vacation reading it just enraptured, because I thought it was just such a brilliant ending, and I just don't know how people can't like it. Like, you're entitled to your opinion, but I just don't understand. As we all know, the Mockingjay films were split into 2 parts, and there's a lot of discussion as to whether that was necessary or not. And personally for me, I think that in a lot of instances, film franchises do this because they want to make more money, they want to build up more hype, and most times it's not necessary. Like for the Divergent franchise, absolutely not necessary at all. For Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, necessary because that's a big book. And for Mockingjay, despite the fact that it's a relatively short book, I think it was absolutely necessary because there's a big tonal shift between the first half of Mockingjay and the second half of Mockingjay, and I think it was just a right call to split it into 2 films, and I think that in terms of where the movie was split was even a smarter choice. Watching the bonus features, I found it really interesting that Francis Lawrence was initially going to end the film with Boggs hitting Peeta over the head with the metal tray, and that it was just gonna go to black. If that had happened, I don't think I would have been able to handle it. I would have been very emotionally unstable, and I would have not have been able to wait a year. I would have just felt very angry. I know I eventually would have gotten over it because I would have known how the rest of the story ended, but I would have been annoyed. So I thought it was smart that he gave us a little bit of some resolution to that scene. But the end of Mockingjay Part 1 gives me nightmares, like seeing Peeta having to thrash around under restraints and just seeing that he is not the Peeta that we knew and loved anymore. Like the last scene in Catching Fire that you see him as normal Peeta, I like sob watching that scene every single time because I know where he's gonna end up in Mockingjay Part 1, and it makes me so angry. But Francis Lawrence just does such a brilliant job of giving you that whole transition and really like making you feel the full impact of that, and it's brutal. A brilliant thing that this book does really, really well is that it has lots of really powerful speeches and just iconic moments that really stick with you, because you're starting to have Katniss see the full impact of her actions and the full impact of this revolution and how her words have impacted other people, and seeing the other districts rebel and really seeing this revolution come to life, and her deciding to take the mantle as the Mockingjay. And particularly, I think like one of the best moments in Part 1 is the speech that she gives in District 8, where she pretty much talks directly to Snow and says, "We burn, you burn with us," because it's her having that recognition of the fact that you can bomb us and torture us, but in that process, you're not gonna get the resources that you need from us. So you're gonna go down with us. And it's such a powerful way of Katniss sticking it to Snow. And it's also that realization of Katniss is best when she is allowed to speak her mind and nobody is telling her what to do. And the movies convey that in such a brilliant way, and also a comedic way as well. You get to see Philip Seymour Hoffman and Elizabeth Banks have a lot of fun with that, and I think that scene in the movie where Katniss is trying to like fake act for the propos is so funny. But it's also a really good transition into Haymitch being like, Katniss is best when she is allowed to just be herself, and so we should let her do that rather than trying to mold her into something that she's not. And it's Haymitch ultimately advocating for Katniss as his way of sort of saying he's sorry for not saving Peeta because, you know, he probably feels guilty because, you know, Peeta's clearly the better option between him and Katniss in terms of just being a good person. I think that moment in the films is really, really powerful, and that it's really one of Katniss's moments at her best. I want to talk about another really great moment in part 1, the hanging tree. The score is insane. I am just so amazed by how beautiful it sounds and how beautifully it's orchestrated, because obviously that song is really, really powerful in the books, especially when you get the explanation from Katniss about what it's about, and it really builds up and you really see the horror of what this song is. The movie takes that and like multiplies it because you have all of the other people from the districts chiming in and singing along to it, and it becomes this anthem for the rebellion, and it's so beautifully orchestrated. James Newton Howard did such a good job with it, and it just gives me chills every time I listen to it. It's so good. But one of the things that bothers me about The Hanging Tree, and I want to talk about this because it annoys me to no end, there was a remix that was made of it that was on the radio, and every time I heard The Hanging Tree on the radio, I just felt so confused because it felt like the antithesis to like everything that that song represented, and it felt so capital-esque, and I was just angry when I heard it. I was like, who decided that this should be a thing that exists? Like, I don't know if you've heard it. Like, why are we jamming out to this song? Like it's very dark. Like, we should not be like jamming out to it and making remixes to it. Like, what is that? Like, makes me like judge my society so hard for this being a thing that existed. I mean, my God. So I don't think there's a lot from part 1 that I really found like too much worth talking about, but part 2 is where things really start to pick up. I forgot so much that happened in part 2, so it was really nice to get to rewatch the movie and reread the second half of the book because it felt like such a nice refresher. One of the big things that I forgot about was the nut and everything that happens in District 2, because I think that's a big moment in a lot of ways. For one, it's this moment that you get to see this divide between Katniss and Gale and their characters, and really what you start to see is that they have had 2 completely different life experiences now that has changed their worldview and has ultimately separated their characters permanently, because Gale is fine with killing all of these individuals in District 2 because they're working for the Capitol, and whatever lives we need to sacrifice in order to take them out, in order to shut the Capitol down, is necessary, and it'll be worthy the lives that were lost. And Katniss, on the other hand, sees the power of every single life and really understands the emotional toll that it takes to be responsible for taking those lives, and realizes that it's that type of thought that could easily lead to the creation of a Hunger Games. Gale will just never be able to understand that, and that's why she has that common bond with Peeta, because her and Peter have been through that experience together, not once but twice, and both of them understand the emotional impact of taking a life and just have that value for life that Gale does not have. Especially after reading Mockingjay, like, there's no world in which I see Katniss and Gale together, and I just don't, I look at the relationship between Katniss, Peeta, and Gale, and I don't even really see it as a love triangle because I don't think there was anything ever there between Katniss and Gale. Like, I think she has moments where she cares about him and she shares so much emotional bond with him because she grew up with him, but he almost is like a cousin to her and like a family member. And sure, they both grew up in the Hub and they have like these similar upbringings, but I don't think that like emotional bond, that emotional significance is there the way that it is for Peeta. And ultimately, like Gale later says down the line, that she'll choose which one of us she can't survive without, and after the bombs go off and she finds out that Gale's bombs are responsible, the only thing that he did for her was protect her family, and now we can't even do that, so like, it's goodbye Gale. And that line in the movie is so good. It's not in the books, but she just says goodbye Gale, and he just walks away, and I'm like, Team Peeta, Team Peeta, Team Peeta. Oh, it's great. But yeah, we're not a fan of Gale in this house. but District 2 was really the beginning of the relationship between Katniss and Gale crumbling, so it's big for that. And then another thing, you get this really powerful speech in which Katniss really realizes the full impact of this game that's being played with the districts in the capital, and so she talks to the people in District 2, and it's ultimately saying, like, you can work for them and you can do their killing and their slaving for them, but they do not care about you, and they are pitting us against each other, and we need to unite and see them as the real enemy. And there's no reason why you shouldn't kill me. Like, I've done the Capitol's killing, you've done the Capitol's bidding, but it's time that we stop that now and we recognize the impact of our actions. And Jennifer Lawrence does such a good job delivering that speech, especially the conversation that she has with that individual from District 2 until it expands out into a bigger message to everyone else that's watching. And it's so beautifully executed in the films, and I just, it's so good, it's so powerful. And I think that's a beautiful thing about those speeches, is because the one in District 8 is for Snow and Snow alone, and the one in District 2 is very much for everyone else, and is sort of a wide recognition of Katniss recognizing her role in this wider revolution and the need for the districts to unite together and stop seeing each other as the enemy. And it's so powerful, and Suzanne Collins' writing for that speech is just, it's amazing. And when she says, turn your weapons to the Capitol, turn your weapons to Snow, like, you just feel the full impact of this revolution rising and of this war building, and it's amazing. It's great. So I think one of the things I also realized when this whole scene in District 2 took place was that for most of Mockingjay, dialogue is taken word for word right out of the books. And it's very much the case for like Catching Fire and Mockingjay Part 1 as well, but for some reason in Mockingjay Part 2 it's when I most recognized it. Like the conversation between Katniss and Gale talking about how kissing Katniss is like kissing a drunk person and it doesn't count. Like all of that is word for word right out of the book. Even if it's taking place in a slightly different context, it's right from the books, and that's amazing. And to me, like, I watched that and I looked at all other YA adaptations and I was like, it's that easy, why can't you do it? And clearly that's not easy, but it's a choice you can make. And they did it so effortlessly. And I continually love and respect them for that. And love the screenplays for these films because they're so accurate to the books. I don't think this needs to be said, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Finnick deserved to live. I love his character so much, and you get so much more of a deep dive into his character in Mockingjay, from finding out like the emotional turmoil that he's gone through, knowing that Annie is at the Capitol and that Snow is using Annie to take advantage of Finnick, and that Snow is now doing the same thing to Katniss with Peeta, because that moment when Peeta hit the force field in Catching Fire and Snow saw Katniss cry, like it's the minute of him sort of scheming up, realizing that she does love him, and now he can use that love to break her. And it's just, it hurts so much. And that conversation between Katniss and Finnick in Mockingjay Part 1, where Finnick delivers the line, it takes 10 times as long to put yourself back together as it does to fall apart, is so emotional, it's so powerful. Sam Claflin does such a good job at delivering that line, and Finnick and Annie's wedding is so beautiful. It's like this really good, wholesome, uplifting moment in Mockingjay Part 2 that I love. And then Finnick is there for Peeta throughout the entire movie, which you don't really get to see a lot of that in the books, but it's so beautiful in the films. And then Finnick dies because he's attacked by the lizards, and it makes me so angry because he deserved to live. And when you find out about all the things that he knew about all the Capitol citizens, and you get more of an explanation about his line with secrets and how Snow used poison and how like iconic that is and how important that's going to be in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes in terms of understanding Snow's motivations and where that all started, I just love Finnick as a character, and I think he's so interesting and sensitive, and I'm just so sad that he's dead. He didn't deserve to die. Boggs didn't deserve to die either. I saw a tweet on Twitter recently that everyone's like, Finnick deserved to live, but what about Boggs? And I agree. I particularly love Mahershala Ali, and I think he does such a good job of bringing Boggs to life. And I was so happy when Mahershala Ali got his Academy Award, because I was like, you were Boggs. I knew you were gonna be like big and famous, and you were gonna be a star, because I just saw him in Mockingjay and I was like, yes, he's so perfect for this role. And the conversation that him and Katniss have in Mockingjay Part 2 shortly before Boggs dies about coin, I think is really powerful and is a really good indicator of who Boggs is as a character, and I absolutely think he deserved better. I think he also really helps Katniss to figure out who Coin is and make her final stamp of approval on Coin, which, let's talk about that, because Coin is shady AF. I think she's an interesting character because Katniss immediately doesn't trust her, but it's hard to trust Katniss's judgment because Katniss doesn't trust anybody besides Prim. in PETA, and that's about it. So you don't want to trust her initial judgments of her not liking Coin, because Coin has been in District 13. She's obviously had to deal with her own people, and she hasn't had the resources and ability to be able to cultivate a rebellion. As the series goes along, you see her more motivated about these grabs for power. She knows that somebody's gonna have to snake Snow's place once all of this is over, and she wants it to be her, and anyone who poses a threat to that is gotta be X'd. And so that whole conversation that Boggs and Katniss have is really Katniss putting two and two together, realizing that when PETA is brought just to the Star Squad, that Coin intends on killing her, because the only thing left that she can do for the rebellion after uniting all the districts is die, and Boggs does not intend for that to happen, and I ultimately think that Boggs wants Katniss to kill Coin, or ultimately wants Katniss to make sure that Coin gets the retribution that she deserves. And that moment when Katniss shoots Coin in the movie and in the book is just so amazing. It's unexpected, but it's so brilliant. It's just iconically Katniss, and I love it. Coin absolutely got what she deserved, and there's so many tiny little things that she did that helped to sign her own death warrant that it's so brilliant to see the buildup of all of those things. Obviously, like, her overreaction to Katniss's death is like one thing, and in the movies you can see like Katniss's reaction of just like, now she's clearly using my death as a motivator for the rebels, and she got exactly what she wanted and is now using it to her advantage. And then once the war's all over and Katniss finds out that Coin was the one that was responsible for dropping all of the bombs on the Capitol children, that's a big thing. And the conversation between Snow and Katniss about that it's insane. Like, it's unreal to me how powerful that scene is, and it so beautifully parallels the scene in Catching Fire, because Snow says to Katniss in one point in our conversation, like, we promised we would never lie to each other, because Katniss ultimately doesn't believe Snow when he says that it was Coin that was responsible for dropping those bombs, because he knows that he is not above killing children, but that he has a purpose and intention with every death that he feels responsible for, that there's meaning behind it, that he wouldn't just selfishly and pointlessly kill people. And there was no point for him in killing those Capitol children. He was going to surrender, or at least he said he was going to. The minute Katniss puts all of that together, it's like Coin's done for. And even more so when Coin brings all the victors together to vote on that symbolic Hunger Games, like, Katniss has the realization that nothing will ever change, and that Coin is just going to be the new Snow. And who says there's going to be one Games? There will be more and more and more, and maybe I won't have to be on the receiving side of it, but somebody will be, and it's about stopping this inhumane and senseless taking of life. And although Katniss votes yes for the games, she says she does it for Prim, and Haymitch says that he's with the Mockingjay, and I feel like there's very much an understanding there that Coin has got to go, and even Haymitch recognizes it, because he comes and talks to Katniss and takes her home. And the movies did a really beautiful job with that scene, because obviously Philip Seymour Hoffman couldn't be there to film it, and so they had to rework it a little bit, but it's such like an impactful moment, and it just is really amazing to see this character shift so much, and to really see her sign her own death warrant, because she was more invested in power than she was about actually making change and about doing something good. And it makes me so happy that Commander Paler from District 8 ended up being voted in as the president of Pan Am, because she deserves it. Paler's a badass, and although we don't get to see a lot of her, the fact that she lets Katniss in to the greenhouse where Snow is and pretty much says she's entitled to seeing Snow and having that conversation with him and learning the information that she does, I just think that that's a big moment for Paler as a character and really makes me love her. The epilogue of Mockingjay Part 2 always makes me cry because of the Toast babies and how it's so accurate to the books in terms of the voiceover and just how I visually pictured it. And I remember when Francis Lawrence tweeted out that they were filming the epilogue and it was done, and it just felt like such an emotional moment and day in the fandom and community. Seeing Katniss and PETA grow back together and the real or not real, I mean, all of it is so heartbreaking, and I just can't. It just, every single time I watch the movie, I just end up in tears. I just end up being an emotional mess because it's so much to take in, and Francis Lawrence did such a great job. Everyone creatively did such a great job of bringing this movie to life. I can't express my love for this franchise enough. It's amazing. So I think that is about it for this video. I don't think I realized how difficult it would be to articulate all of my thoughts on the series because there's just so much that happens in these books and in these movies, and I just love every single moment of it. Everything is so well done and so well executed, and there's so many wonderful people who help to bring this franchise to life that do not get enough respect and appreciation for the work that they do, and I'm so grateful to all of them, and grateful to Suzanne Collins for giving us this story and for continuing to remain her authentic and genuine self. I know there's a lot of people that worry about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but I have no worries at all, and I think Suzanne Collins is going to do a great job, and I'm so excited to get to discuss it with all of you very, very soon. But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time in a new one. Goodbye!